Hello everyone. This is the fourth video in a series of videos going over how to program using the Arduino. In this video, we will be going over conditional statements, specifically what are called if-else statements. If-else statements are places in our program where we ask the program a question, and then we tell the program to do something based on the answer to that question. As an example, consider crossing the street. Whenever we cross the street, we ask ourselves the question, are there any cars coming? And then if there are any cars coming, then we don't cross the street because it's not safe. But if there are no cars coming, then we do cross the street. Similarly, if we're driving up to a stoplight, we ask ourselves the question, is the stoplight green? And if it is green, we go through the stoplight. And if it's red instead, we stop. And then if it's yellow, take some judgment, but nevertheless, we're asking ourselves these questions. And similarly, in a program, we can ask these questions, and then depending on the answer to those questions, do certain things. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to open up a new sketch, and then like always, we're going to create our documentation. And so for this program, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be generating a random integer between 1 and 10, and then depending on different conditionals that we state, we're going to have it print that value. So let me go ahead really quick and save this. If else. Okay. So the first thing we need to do is we're going to declare a new integer variable that's going to store our random number. So I'm going to call this integer variable random int. And we're not going to set any value of it yet. And for our comment, we're going to say this variable will store the random integer. And then since we're going to be using the serial monitor in void setup, we're going to again need that command serial.begin 9600. If you're not familiar with the serial monitor, you can check the previous video. And then just as a reminder, we need this to use the serial monitor. Okay, and now within void loop, this is where we're actually going to generate the random integer. So we're going to say random int is equal to, we're going to use the built-in function called random. And this function takes in two numbers, two integer values, so I'm going to do 1 and 11. And what this is doing is it's generating a random integer between 1 and 11, but it's going to exclude 11. So it's basically going to create a random number that's either 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10. So we're going to generate a random number, a random integer, between 1 and 10. And then now we're going to, depending on certain conditionals, we're going to print this number. So let's look at the syntax of the if-else statement. So the syntax looks something like this. We're going to say if, and then in the parentheses, we're going to put some conditional statement. And we'll say what those are in a minute. And then we need an open and closed curly bracket right here. And to tell you what's going on, we're saying if the conditional statement is true, do whatever is between these curly brackets. And so that would just go right here. And then after the if portion of the statement, we need the else portion of the statement. The else portion of the statement is basically saying if the conditional statement is false, do whatever is between these curly brackets. So you would put that here. So what kind of conditional statement do we want to start with? So let's say that if that random integer is greater than or equal to 5, then we're going to print it. So let's say if random int, and now we want to say greater than or equals to. And this is very similar to mathematics language. So we're going to say greater than or equal to 5. And we're going to go ahead and have it print on a new line the value of the random integer. So print random int, on the serial monitor. And then I'm going to change, no, we'll keep that. And then if it's not greater than or equal to 5, or in this case, if it's less than or equal to 5, then I'm going to have it print some text. In this case, we'll say the random int is less than 5. Print this. And then, just like before, we're going to have a delay so that our code's not running too quickly. We'll have a delay for 1,000 milliseconds or 1 second. Okay, and so now let's go ahead and upload our code to the Arduino. And again, so what this is going to be doing is, every time it generates a random number, it's going to check and see, is that random number greater than or equal to 5? And if it is, it's going to print that random number. And then if it's not, then it's going to print this line of text that we have right here. Okay, our program is finished uploading to the board. Let's go ahead and open up the serial monitor. And we can see, okay, it's printing numbers that are greater than 5, and then if the number is not greater than or equal to 5, then it's printing out this text just like we expected. Okay, so another type of conditional statement that we can do, instead of checking if it's greater than or equal to something, or similarly less than or equal to something, we can also check to see if it is equal to something. And I want to point out that if we did this line right here, if random int equals 5, this would not work. The reason is that in the programming language, when we write random int equals 5, that's more of a definition. We're telling the program random integer is the same as 5. If we want it to check and see if the random integer is equal to 5, we need this double equal sign. And so now we're only going to print this random integer if it's equal to 5, and otherwise we're going to print some text, and now we're going to say the text will be the random integer is not equal to 5. And we'll go ahead and upload this to our board. Okay, let's open up the serial monitor. And we can see that in most cases, the random integer is not equal to 5, which makes sense because there's 10 different numbers that might be generated, and only one of them is 5. So very rarely do we actually see that the number 5 is being generated. Okay, we're going to look at two more ways that we can use conditional statements. So we've seen how we can use, say, greater than or equals to, or less than or equals to, and also just is equals to. We can combine these in different ways. So let's say that we only want to print the random integer if it's, say, between 4 and 7. So only if it's equal to 4, 5, 6, or 7. Well, one way that we can do that is we can say, well, first let's check, is the random integer greater than or equal to 4? In this case, it's going to check and say, okay, well, if it's 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8, or 9, or 10, then this thing is true. But we want another thing to be true. We also want it to be less than or equal to 7, and we can use the command AND. So now we're going to say not only if the random integer is greater than or equal to 4, but we also want to check if the random integer is less than or equal to 7. So in order for this whole conditional statement to be true, both of these statements have to be true. Okay? And then now in the else statement, we're going to say that the random integer is not between 4 and 7. Again, we'll go ahead and upload this to the board and take a look on our serial monitor. All right, let's take a look. Okay, and just like before, we're having it that in many cases it's not between 4 and 7, but when it is, we're seeing those numbers pop up. 4, 5, 4, 6, and so on. Okay, the last thing that I want to show you is instead of these AND statements, we're going to do OR statements. So now let's say we only want to print the random integer if it's equal to 1 or if it's equal to 10. So we can say if the random integer is equal to 1, we want it to print the number, or if the random integer is equal to 10, we want it to print that random number. And so for this whole statement to be true, since it's an OR statement, only one of those two things needs to be true. All right? And so again, we're going to change our text here. We're going to say the random integer is not equal to 1 or 10. And we'll go ahead and upload it. Okay, one last time, let's open up the serial monitor. And again, we're seeing that when the number is equal to 10 or 1, it prints that value. But then every time that it's not equal to 1 or 10, it has print this text that we've determined it to print. Okay, so as a challenge for you, I'd like you to alter these conditional statements so that it will only print the value of the random integer if that value is even. And if the value is odd, it's going to print out the text, the random integer is odd. So this has been the fourth video in a series of videos going over how to program using the Arduino. I hope you found this video useful, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.